thousands of primary schools couldn't resume full-time classes yesterday as some schools struggled to meet the various requirements. For over a year now, you'll remember that most pupils have been learning on a shift system. With some pupils now back full-time, some schools haven't been able to receive all of them due to the 1 meter social distancing rule. So, for a close look at the situation on the ground in the various schools, we are joined by the president of the Progressive Principals Association, Dawn Peterson, who is also a principal of the Golden Grove Primary School in the area of Cape Town. She joins us now from Cape Town. Ms. Peterson, thank you very much for your time. I'm quite keen to know, firstly, yesterday at the Golden Grove Primary School that you lead, were you able to accommodate all of your primary school pupils, or did the 1 meter social distancing rule get in the way of that?
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. So Golden Grove started as we ended at the end of last term. We started with a daily rotation attendance model, which means that we had split our children into Group A and Group B. We started because at our school we are fortunate enough to be able to possibly look within our budget to see how we can bring our children back to school at full capacity. But we also had applied at the end of last term to continue with the trips, so the daily rotation. So that if and when we bring our children back at full capacity, we can actually at any time, if we see or notice that the full capacity and the full return of learners is not working, that we can go back to the daily rotation model. So we started the term by sending out a letter to our parents, informing our school community that together as the SGB and SMT, we have put proposals, we have been engaging, we've been having meetings, looking at how we would bring our learners back and if we could. But we have now, after, like I said, many deliberations, we are going to phase in the return of our learners starting next week with the full return of our grade 7 and grade 1s, while the rest of the school still continues with the daily rotation model.
How are you doing as far as this 1 meter social distancing is concerned? I'm talking now per classroom.
Okay, so as I said, in preparation, but I must make it clear, when speaking on behalf of the PPA also, the vast majority of schools cannot adhere as they do not have the luxury of having extra spaces and having financial resources. So that is me speaking as the president of the PPA, understanding fully that the vast majority of our schools cannot adhere and do this.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of the schools within the Western Cape...
Yeah, please go on.
Sorry?
Yeah, please go on.
So the vast majority of the schools that I'm aware of have applied for them to continue with the daily rotation model. As I was saying to you, at Golden Grove, because we are in the fortunate position where we do have some budget that we're looking at using, and we've just actually, I've just come physically, gone into a class physically to set up the extra space that we have. We actually can adhere, but that means that what we need to do in grade 7, for example, we have 109 grade 7s. We had 3 classes for the 109 learners. We now have to split them into 4 classes. We have to employ an extra teacher, and we have to have an extra space. So the space that we have cleared out has been our science lab.
Yes. Let's talk about the risk-adjusted strategy. This particular strategy, what it basically means in simple terms is that if you have a certain number of infections in the school, then it means that you're going to have to come to the drastic decision of shutting down the school given the number of infections at a particular school. Is your school or has your school experienced this? And in your view, how do you plan to handle this should that eventuate?
again, very, very fortunate that we have not had any COVID cases at our school, in the sense that learners at the school have become infected or staff members have become infected at school. What we are finding is that on a daily basis, we are reporting to our parents, and we are reporting that many of our learners have to go into quarantine because they are in close contact with their parents or family members that have tested positive. So we're finding, on an average, since last week when we came back to school, I've sent out 4 letters informing parents, and we're averaging about 10 learners in close contact on a daily basis with, like I said, family or close friends, etc.
Yes. We also joined in this conversation, Ms. Peterson, by Phumzile Masiteng, who is an acting deputy principal in one of the public schools here in the Gauteng province. Ms. Masiteng, thank you very much for joining this conversation. You don't want to disclose the school that you work at, and we're going to respect that. But importantly, when you opened yesterday, were you able to accommodate all of your primary school learners, or did social distancing become a problem?
Thank you for welcoming me. When we opened yesterday, it was quite a shock, but we could accommodate all our learners.
Sure.
However, the social distancing was not adhered to at all. So it was really difficult. We cannot accommodate all our learners in the full capacity of 100%. And it was quite a challenge. Things seemed to be slowing down with everything that we were doing, starting from the morning session when we were taking scanning the learners and taking the temperatures and all that. It was quite slow, and even the learners were really uncomfortable, although they were wearing masks, windows were opened, and all the other protocols were adhered to, but the congestion was just too much. We couldn't accommodate all learners.
And so on day 2, what have you done subsequent to the fact that social distancing could not be met? So what have you done differently today?
Seeing that we were supposed to carry on with the 100%, we've got our exam boards that we have used, that we are using to put between the learners when they are writing tests in the previous times. We have used that, but it's not working, it's not effective. So we have accepted the learners back still like that, but now we've got to make sure that they are adhering to other protocols like sanitizing every now and then. So we've got to make sure that they sanitize as we do work, as we touch books and all that, so they are sanitizing. So we are still back with them, but we are hoping that, because we are told that from tomorrow we can go back to also 50%, so we are busy with the letters, writing them to the district saying we cannot accommodate learners, and informing parents that they should keep the learners because we are going back to groups. The groups are much better.
Sure. So it's back to the rotational system at your specific school.
Yes, it is.
Ms. Peterson, let's bring you back into the conversation in Cape Town. The rotational system, how many of the pupils out of the plus minus 400, 500,000 learners that we are told by the Department of Basic Education have now dropped out of school completely? How many, in your knowledge, particularly in the area of Cape Town, have dropped out of school as a result of this rotational system?
As per my knowledge, this is obviously not from stats, etc. This is from conversations with colleagues. They're saying that they're having a huge problem for learners coming back to school. A colleague of mine said yesterday they have an average of a 25% absentee rate daily due to the daily rotation model. So that is what I have been told, as I said, not with stats. That seems to be the scenario in all schools. And I would almost want to venture and say that it could be in others, and some schools, quite a higher amount of learners that have not returned to school. If we talk again to our schools in the township areas, where we've also recently been dealing with the taxi violence in the area. We had cases where we would have 5 children in the class on a daily basis. That was when we started school because of the taxi violence. So there's many other factors, besides the COVID, which is a huge, huge worry for all of us, that is impacting on the children coming back to school.
Yeah. Ms. Masiteng, let's perhaps close the conversation with you. It is a difficult balancing act by the Department of Basic Education to try and get learners back to school, because many of them have fallen behind on their academic studies. The question here is, do you think it was a responsible decision to say all learners must now come back on a full-time basis, given your experiences at your specific school?
Well, I think it was irresponsible, and the fact that they are not aware, they do not know our daily basis and our challenges that we encounter every day. The one other thing is the transports themselves were having a problem. Having had 2 groups to transport, I'm sure they've made alternatives of getting their buses fuller. So now that they had to take the whole group in one trip, it became a problem. So they do not know what problems we sit with in classes. And also problems differ with each school. In the township schools, it's even worse. Those classes are so small that they cannot even accommodate learners who are sitting 1 per desk. So the classes are very small. So it was really something that was not thought through. They didn't think about it properly, and they do not know what problems we are sitting with different schools individually.
Well, to the both of you, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. Acting Deputy Principal Phumzile Masiteng of an unnamed school. We respect that. Also in the conversation, Dawn Peterson. She is the President of the Progressive Principals Association, also a principal of a school. It's called Golden Grove Primary in Cape Town. Thanks indeed for your contribution to this conversation. We are going to keep monitoring the situation. The Education Department seemingly tracking back on this particular decision that schools, primary school pupils go back on a full-time basis. It is a difficult one indeed. Still ahead, we are going to speak to the Basic Education Portfolio Committee Chairperson, Bongiwe Mbingo Gigaba, who is going to give us her sense of whether or not this decision by the department to take primary school pupils in the public space in particular back to school on a full-time basis was a responsible one, given the kind of feedback that we are getting now. That conversation in a bit.